Wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
You just listen to the old Pork Chop Express here now and take his advice on a dark and stormy night when the lightning's crashing and the thunder's rolling and the rain's coming down in sheets thick as lead.
Well, good morning and welcome back. It is week 2 on the ModelWorx Jack figure, and we're going to finish this up toot sweet, I think, in the next day or so. You know, this is the time of year when all the holiday specials come out and you sit back and enjoy them. And one of my favorites is the Charlie Brown Christmas special. Been going on since 1965, and I think I've seen it every year since it first came out. But there's this wonderful line in there that Frida tells Pigpen right after Charlie Brown has assigned them their roles in the nativity, and Frida gives Pigpen a mirror to look at, and she tells him, "Just look at yourself. You look like a mess," and words to that effect. And he studies himself for a while, and he says, "On the contrary, I didn't think I looked this good." Now, that's the kind of confidence we should all have in life. And it's the kind of reaction I had when I stepped away from Jack for a couple of days and came back on Monday morning. And I looked at him and I said, "On the contrary, I didn't think he looked that good." There is a lot here that when, given time away and my hypercritical nature has had a chance to rest, when I come back to it and look at it semi-objectively, it's pretty good. It's not something that I feel I really need to go over. Now, if you sit down and you study every little square millimeter of this, you're going to find flaws. And Lord knows there's plenty. But I'm further along than I really thought. And I tell you what it is, and it's my nature of working with flesh tones, is I have a tendency to try to do the lighting job for it instead of, trusting sunlight. Because I'm trying to paint in all of the shadows and all of the shading that nature provides when you shine a light on something. And it's just, that's where I get my overworked, over-made up, drag queeny look, for lack of a better term. Flesh tones, yes, there's a lot of mottling in a flesh tone. I mean, look at that. There's freckles, there's hairs, there's all that kind of stuff. But you're not going to see them at this scale. When I had the freckles on his shoulders, I went back and thought about it, and it's like, if I were to think about those in scale, what looks like a nice little dot here would be about the size of a dime. Which, having had my melanoma scare, was if you've got a dime-sized spot on you, chances are you need to get yourself to a skin doctor. You might need to have a checkup. So I kind of ixnayed all of the freckling at this scale, and I took back the 5 o'clock shadow, and it's for the same reason. Those hairs would be about the width of a pencil and not really something you would want to have on your face. So I'm going back to the mantra of less is more. Now, that having been said, there's still some work I need to do on the hands to get rid of some of the over-dramatic shading on both hands, and some of them where I might need to actually put in a little more shading and clean up some paint blotches. But I am, for the very most part, outside of touching up a little bit on his hair, I think I am very close to being done, and I don't think I want to mess with it anymore. And the big news for this week is going to be getting the decal on his t-shirt. And I got a very good suggestion, very excellent idea from reading the comments on the first week's work, that I should drill out this barrel on the gun. And that's something I should have thought of, really should have thought of it before I even painted it and attached it to the rest of the wrist, because it would have been a heck of a lot easier to work on it that way. But I'm not a big gun guy, so I didn't give it the attention that it probably deserved. So I'm going to go back. That's one of the first things I'm going to do today, because who knows how much of a mess I'm going to make of it, and there's no sense painting the work on his hand if I end up having to repaint the gun as a side side effect of fixing that. So there's no sense working here if I have a chance in, 1 chance in 10 of messing this up. So what first thing I did this morning was I got a piece of aluminum stock that I had that was the right size, and I cut it down. And rather than just cutting this off, cutting this tip off and replacing just the tip, insert your own joke there, what I'm going to do is actually drill it down to that point so that I open up all of these holes to the barrel that's on the inside and provide it some dimension. First thing I need to do is to nip off the end of that barrel so that I get a good center hole, a center punch hole, so that I can drill out the rest of the barrel going down in. And once I've done that, I can open up these side holes. Okay, there's a good replacement barrel. It is maybe a little short. I can pull it out a little bit. I get to clean the burrs off of the edges. Going by the artwork, which is never a good idea, by the way. Never go by artwork when you've got a picture of the actual thing, because you end up getting an artist's interpretation, and you could end up compounding an error if you rely on that as your sole source. But yeah, clean off the edge of that barrel. Now what I want to do is open up all of these holes going down the side so that you can see the barrel on the inside. Won't be silver, obviously. I'll still paint it black, but it'll give you that extra bit of dimension, I think. Alrighty, this plays into what I was saying about always using photographic reference when you've got the ability to do so. This is a publicity shot of Dennis Dunn and Kurt Russell for the movie, and you can clearly see that that gun has holes going all the way through the barrel. And that is what I have tried my darndest to accomplish here with this resin piece. Now, the walls of the resin barrel are much thicker than the walls of the barrel there, so you're not going to get the same result. But by drilling those out, maybe I've come a little closer. And you can also tell from looking at that perhaps that gun is a little longer, a little more stretched out than what is seen in the actual prop, because it doesn't look like Kurt's got any great stretch of the finger to make it fit the trigger, but it looks like on the kit that hand is really working to reach the trigger finger there, and I think it comes too far back on his wrist as well. I just think maybe this gun was a little big or a little long for the hand that's supposed to fit it. It looks better on this side, but maybe the grip needs to be a little bit thinner. I don't know exactly, but you also get a good sense that this is very much a flat black. You see even the highlight on it is dull. It's not a shiny highlight. Like the cartridge is here, or the magazine for the bullets. That is by the sharpness of that highlight, you can tell how glossy that is, and that looks to be definitely a flat finish. So that's what I need to make sure is captured with my finish for the gun. So there you go. Now I've got the barrel, and I've got the tip of it hollow. Well, it's not hollowed out because it's a tube, but I've got it rounded back out because after I sawed it off, it had a tendency to flatten over. You do that if your metal is really soft, but if you zoom back out, maybe you can see what I'm doing. But if you pop it in like that and glue it in, then I should be able to paint that barrel black and get a more defined look to the end of the barrel. And there you go. Alrighty, it's been a time for the paint to dry, and I'm very happy with this gun. I'm glad I took the time. I'm glad it was suggested to me to drill out those holes. I'm glad I took the time to do it. I think it makes it look just that much better. I gotta tell you, we're coming up. We're coming up on the time. And I think what I want to do now is put a gloss varnish over the shirt, just in the shirt area, so that we can get ready to apply the big decal. Don't see too much other stuff left. I mean, there's some touch up on the hands. There's some paint work that needs to be done there. But I want to see the big colorful t-shirt come together, and I think that's where we're down to it. Just a few scant details left. Alrighty, and then I just put a nice gloss coat of the gloss varnish, the Vallejo gloss varnish, over top of where the decal's going to go. Also took the opportunity to paint in some gloss varnish over his lips and teeth and his glinty eyes. And we're going to let that dry. Actually, I probably should lay him down like that. So let it dry this way so it doesn't want to drip down the front of him. And we're going to let that dry. And then I think for the last big thing today, we're going to put the decal down, I think. Okay, time has come. It's time to put the decal down on the shirt. And I'm of the opinion that this decal is too big. However, this is also the full design. So not using the movie poster or any of this artwork as my reference, because like I said, if you use artwork as a reference, you are channeling that reference through interpretation. I am using a photo taken on the set. Now, I am also of the opinion that, they probably, like everything in Hollywood, have 2 or 3 duplicates of costume, especially hero wardrobes. They usually have 3 or 4, sometimes 5 copies of things, depending on how battered or how torn up that costume is going to get. So, having that in mind, I am going with this depiction of the logo on this particular shirt, shot on this particular day, because I know at least this is accurate in this moment. And I've noticed that the belt, just the very top of his sleeves, this guy's sleeves, hit the waistband of Jack's jeans. So when you take that into account, you are talking about cutting off this decal at about this height, in which case it becomes much smaller because all of this stuff is stuff that wouldn't be there. You would cut it off about like that and a bit of an arc like that so that it wraps around. So I am going to start by chopping off this much of the logo, or this much of the decal. Sorry, getting that glare in the way. Chopping off this much of the decal, and then I am fully prepared, once this has set, to then trim even more of it once it has dried. Well, I have to wait till it's mostly dry before I can cut that. I may want to try shaping it and then trimming it kind of closely before I get too far. I might, you know what I might do? I might take a piece of tracing paper and trace this area out and then kind of superimpose it on the decal and see how that looks. Let's try that out. Alrighty, I had just taken a piece of tracing paper, plain old tracing paper, and I just went and traced the outer perimeter of the t-shirt. And I came up with this wonderful shape. Now, if you slide it up and down to where these sleeves hit the seam, or hit the hem where the pants come, or at the waist, then you find that this moon shape is in the right proportion, and this distance between the neck, the opening of the neck, and the top of the design is correct. So it looks something like that, but what that gives me is a place to, or a line that I can use to cut. And what I probably will end up doing is I will move it down like this to get me my line, and that I can jockey that into position on the shirt, and then run a very sharp X-Acto along that line to cut it. But that gives me a good place to start. A quick word about the colors on the transfer here. I was kind of, when I looked at the, you look at the decal and you think, man, those colors are they're kind of washed out. The sun isn't as vibrant as the sun in that picture, or the red shape behind it, and these colors are kind of washed out, and I wish there was a little bit more oomph to them. And then you realize that all of the colors in this picture are kind of saturated. I find another photo in the same book that is probably more realistic, has more photographic lights on it, for maybe, but it's a little bit more carefully composed. It's not a on-set shot, and there you see the colors there are a little bit more washed out, and this is a lot closer to that. So if you take this as your reference, then these colors are fine. And there you have the reference of the see-through barrel on the gun and everything else. But it gives me this point right here, which is the distance between the top of this shape and the neck cutout on the shirt. If only there was a good way to simulate the hair on his chest. I just don't know it. But I think, and the reason I'm arguing this out is because this is kind of a one and done thing, and I want to make sure I have thought of all my contingencies before I get ready to put it down. But here you can also see where it's kind of washed out, a little bit more washed out. This might go into that theory that I had, or the statement that I had about, multiple versions of the same shirt. It could be that one version was more washed out than others. So I cannot fault the decal. I think it's, first I thought it was too big, then it turned out it wasn't. Then I thought it was too faded, and it turned out it wasn't. So maybe these guys know what they're doing after all. So now I just need to get some clean, warm water and get ready to put this thing down. So I got to line up some Q-tips and a sharp blade, and we'll be ready to go. Okay, it's down. It's looking okay, looking pretty good. It's glossy because it's a decal. It will lose that once I spray over it with the flat coat. Something else I should have sprayed over first is while I was very careful to put the gloss on the shirt where it was going to go, I should have sprayed the skin as well, because I got a errant water droplet on his shoulder, and before I could mop it up, it was starting to eat through the paint that was on there, the Vallejo paint. Very susceptible to the water damage, so I got to touch that up. Now, luckily, I was planning on touching up the hands anyway, but I just didn't want to have to ask for more trouble. If I was really going to be a completionist, just an anal retentive completionist, I would put his vaccination mark on his shoulder, because like many of us who went to school around that era, and I don't believe Kurt Russell is that much older than I am. I remember him as a child when I was watching Lost in Space, and he showed up on an episode of Lost in Space, and he couldn't have been more than 12 or 13 at the time. So he's maybe 6-8 years older than I am. But I remember if you were a child and you went to school around that era, you got vaccinated at school, and you had a big pockmark on your shoulder from the needle, or the group of needles that they shot you with. It's fun to see, because if you notice a lot of movies at the time, actors and actresses, it's one of those things you could spot if you know what to look for, and the makeup person didn't cover it. I think it was, I'm not sure if it was Raquel Welch or what other movie in 20,000 years BC or whatever, but there was one movie where the character was supposed to be a prehistoric person, and they had a vaccination mark on their shoulder. But that's an interesting aside. But other than that, and here you can see the amount of decal that I did not need. But it's on. It really completes the look. It's sort of like the rug in Big Lebowski. It really brings the room together. So I'm going to kind of do some smoothing out by hand there, try to get rid of some of these wrinkles. But I think it's worth a small very light dusting of the microset to get it to lay down. Good body every morning. It is Tuesday, and Jack is coming along quite nicely. I have sprayed him nice and dull. Not that Jack is a dull boy, all work and no play being what it is, but I wanted to get the flat coating on, not only over the decal, which all of the carrier film has disappeared. That is a beautiful decal, Dave. I will tell you, Archer does fine work. That is a beautiful decal. But the decal is now into the shirt. It is integral. I have put a flat spray over the pants and boots so that the boots are a little bit shinier, but the pants are definitely not shiny jeans now. They are flat jeans. And then I went back in and re-highlighted the brass or bronze metallic clasps there on the boots. So that's done. I've gone in and reworked some of the detail that was lost on the watch and on the hilt of the knife, touching up the fingers here and there. Again, the gun that I did yesterday, marvelous. We are very close to being done with Jack. Now the only thing really left to do is to pin him to the base. So I've cut some metal rod, and then what I need to do is just drill up into the bottom of the feet and then mark out those spots on the base so that I can pin him down to the base. We'll be darn close to being done. Now I still need to I touched up this area where I had the water droplet yesterday. Hopefully you can't see it. That's the goal. I'm thinking one last flat coating over from the chest up, because I kind of held him by the head while I was doing the rest of the flat coating, and the face never got a good flat coating. I'm debating whether or not to try to put in any perspiration or anything around his hair. His hair should be, I'll look at it flat, but it should have some shine to it. It should be a little bit greasy, so I might leave that satin look on his hair the way it is. Of course, making sure that his lips and teeth are glossy and that his eyes are glossy, but we are darn close to being finished. We are down to the final strokes, as it were. So taking my time, last thing I'm going to do is pull out the Dremel and drill those bits. Now, the reason I didn't want to, I realized I said drill bits. The reason I didn't want to drill out the feet, because I need him to stand, and then once I put the spikes in the bottom of his heels, he's not going to be able to stand by himself except on the base. So while I had him out like this, it was possible to work and hold him and do all that kind of stuff. Once I put these into the bottom of his legs, he's not going to be able to stand by himself. Well, I'm thinking, do I, obviously I need to put him in his feet first, and then, because the feet are more delicate, these holes can be anywhere, but there's a specific spot going up through his heel that I need to drill. So I can drill those and then kind of mark out on the base where I need to drill the base holes. But I'm wondering if I do that and then, but if I put the spikes up into his heels but don't glue them, then I can mark them out on the base, put them on the base, glue them to the base, and then I can still pull him up off of the base and just have the little spikes be sitting there. That may be the way to go. The spikes will be glued into the base, so if I need to remove him for transport or whatever, then I can just sit him back down on top of the spikes. That's going to be the way to go. I'm thinking this stuff out loud, and you get a front row seat from my thought process. So let's get the Dremel out and start a drilling. Alrighty, good morning, welcome back. It is Wednesday and Jack is finished. Now, last couple of days you may have seen me picking at little things that are kind of tough to see. They're not big global changes that might be noticeable from video to video, but rest assured I have been going in and fine-tuning and finessing little bits. And the last thing I have to do today is to glue him down to the base. I've got pins in his feet. Sorry, I had to sneeze. I have pins in his feet. I have decided to go ahead and glue him down because I'm going to be transporting him when I do kind of in this mode, so it's not like I'm going to lay him down and have to worry about, would still wrap him with tissue paper when I need to move him, but there's no harm in going ahead and laying him down. Plus, it actually will protect his hands if they are kept up in this position, as opposed to taking him off the stand and wrapping him separately. You might run the risk of something happening here. This way I can encapsulate him in a larger box and be done with it. So the last thing I want to do before I pin him down or glue him down is I want to pull him off the base, one last coat of a flat finish just to cover up the skin that I touched up, and then I'll be able to glue him down. Before I'm done, I know this is where it gets into the tiny minutia, but I want to take one last look at his entire head and his hair and see if I'm really happy with that. See if I'm because it's going to be tough. I can still touch him up once he's nailed down, but it would be so much easier to do that before he's nailed down. So why make life tough on myself when I don't have to? The reason I am so frantic about this is that I'm taking him to my model meeting tonight, which also will be attended by Dave, the kind gentleman who created this kit. So if he's going to go meet his maker, he had better be in his best dressed clothes. Okay, the very last thing I need to do before I can nail Jack down to his base, now that he's had the flat coat put over him, is I need to go back in with the Tamiya Clear and do his eyes, his lips and teeth, and the crystal on the back of his watch. And that should be all of the really glossy things. Alrighty, he's had his good glossing on his teeth and eyes. He's happy and healthy. And the last thing to do is to mix up a little bit of 5-minute epoxy and put it on his wee tiny feet and get him ready to get glued down. And there goes the phone. Okay, he's down, he's glued. I wanted to make sure I didn't put too much on here for fear that it would creep out underneath his boot and onto the slate stone, because I want those to be two different finishes. So I want to make sure that I don't have to try to cover up any glue. Looks like I've been successful, but we'll see how well it dries in. And then I'll be back. Let this dry now, but I'll be back in a few minutes to give some final thoughts. Okay, as promised, I have my wrap up ready. Now, here we go. I'm holding him by him, which means he's good and epoxied down. And here is the final Jack. Now, like I said, I'm kind of nervous because I'm taking him to meet his maker tonight. And if he comes back at me with any grand suggestions of things I could improve or things that I should relook at, I may yet do it. But unless I hear something earth-shattering, this guy's done. And I'll tell you, it's flesh tones, which, like I said, are not my favorite. But I will tell you once again that flesh tones on big burly men are completely different than trying to do flesh tones and beauty makeup on a princess or a buxom babe or anything like that. So I still reserve the right to be antsy about doing flesh tones, particularly if it was on, well, the closest I would say is that Elvira that I did, as far as making gorgeous, attractive flesh tones. So Jack will forgive me a little bit if I say his flesh tones are somewhat less than picture perfect. But again, if I had my druthers, if I had Dave's ear to chew, which I do, but he's already made these kits, he's not going to go back and change anything, I would have made the arms removable, only because of the seam through here that you don't really get to clean out that well on this kit. And seams through hair, there's a seam here that I can still see because it goes through the hair, and you kind of have to file file through the seam into and keeping with the hair, and that's a problem whether it's Jack or Chewbacca. I mean, it's a problem. It's nature of the beast, no pun intended. There's just going to be a seam. It was really, and again I keep going back to Elvira because it's the only comparable kit that I built like this, but there was a horrendous seam that went down through the hair that you really had to clean out each one of them, both the peak and the valley. So that was, that's going to happen unless you're building, completely bald characters, and then you have the problem of sanding the seam over their bald head. So it's always going to be something. But as far as figure kits goes, this is mighty fine. This is good work. I was surprised how easy the eyes were to paint. They're not 100% perfect, but I can give you you could tell that the eyes are there, that the indication is that they're looking up. These eyes are actually looking up and to the side, which some reason I find easier. Once I pointed them in a direction, I found that easier to paint rather than trying to make them look straight out, because sometimes when that happens I end up making things look cross-eyed, and maybe that's just me. But the decal, which I was kind of sweating, went on like a charm. That's pretty much it. I say it's a good kit. If you can still find it online, it's a good buy. So I hope you enjoyed it. Now who knows what I'll be doing next, but we'll find something. I think I got like sort of like Adam Savage's one-day build. I think I've got a nice little 2-day build that I'll finish out the week. This being Wednesday, I'm finished. I'm going to upload the video today, and unless I get back from the meeting tonight and Dave's got some great suggestions, in which case I will pull this back and not load it tonight. So if you see it on Wednesday, or if you then you'll know it met the approval, it got the blessings, and I didn't have to do anything else additional. So until next time, be good to each other, and stay out of big trouble.
When some wild-eyed 8-foot-tall maniac grabs your neck, taps the back of your favorite head up against a barroom wall, and he looks you crooked in the eye, and he asks if you've paid your dues, well, you just stare that big sucker right back in the eye, and you remember what old Jack Burton always says at a time like that. Have you paid your dues, Jack? Yes, sir, the check is in the mail.